It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. You can find me at Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting through my website, emailrevealer.com, or you can just contact me directly at oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. Now, that's if you need some PI work. If you want to contact me about the show, it's oppermanreport@gmail.com, or you can go to the website, oppermanreport.com. If you like our show, check out our Patreon. Okay, we have new content goes up on Patreon every month, about 8 hours of new content goes up on Patreon each month, exclusive on one of a lot of free stuff I put up on Patreon too, and also to all the shows you hear Monday to Friday, AM, FM radio, we put up there without the ads. And you can go to our Spreaker channel and sign up there for free. You get an email notification anytime we put up new content, and also too there's an email notification. There's a chat room too where you can go in there and chat with people. And all the guys we're talking about today with our guest Francis Richard Conolly about his book JFK to 9/11, Everything's a Rich Man's Game. Half the people in that movie are you could find on my Spreaker channel over there. But Francis Richard Conolly, are you there?
I'm here, and you disappeared for about 5 seconds.
Oh, did I? Okay. Well, we're here now, though. So tell us about yourself. Remind the audience, because we just had you on the other day. Who is Francis Richard Conolly?
Francis Richard Conolly is a writer and dramatist and a film director. I was born in the northeast of England and raised in an Irish Catholic community. And I became a filmmaker and wound up making, as you've said, in the first part, the cult YouTube film, JFK to 9/11, Everything is a Rich Man's Trick.
And the book is now available on tryingday.com, good old Chris Milligan. And I'm sure Chris flipped out when he saw the content of your material there that involves skull and bones, right?
He did a bit, yeah. I don't know how many of your listeners will know this, but he's, because of his father's involvement with the CIA, he was brought up. His father tried to tell him the truth about how secret societies run America, and as a young man, I think obviously you always get a generational thing. Chris resisted it a bit. Then, as he grew older, he realized just how important it was, and it wound up becoming the focus of his life. And he wound up writing books about it himself, and there's several books actually. Also, a very important relationship in my publisher's life was with Professor Anthony Sutton, who is featured in my movie. Anybody who considers themselves to be literate and interested in this entire thing could do a lot worse than to look at the work of Professor Sutton, because I would say he was the first great intellectual, Ed, to really start investigating the links between the secret societies and the building of the Hitler war machine. So books of his, like The Best Enemy That Money Can Buy, things like that. I mean, you can find a list of his works online, but a very, very important figure and a fantastic resource for me personally, Professor Anthony Sutton.
You know, part of when I was just watching the film the other day, and part of at the end, you talk about how the United States, not just helped fund the Nazis, and we're going to get into that in depth in a minute, about how we financed the Russians during the Vietnam War. And I got a little story to tell you. It's like a little anecdote. I was sitting at a bar one day, and I was talking to this guy I met in a bar, okay? And he starts telling me about how he did this work with NASA, with the space program, okay, for years and years and years. And he said to me, he goes, oh, yeah, and we were working together with the Russians. And I said, oh, you mean like the space station later on in the 70s? And he said, oh, no. From the very beginning. We were trading information back and forth from the Russians from the very beginning of the space program. Even when we said on TV it was a race. Okay? So that's a guy, totally, same thing like Chris Milligan, like his father told him. Now, back to the show. Okay. Now, a theme of your book, okay, is about how the Nazis really won World War II. And we've done that theme here before with Lisa Pease, who wrote the book about Sirhan Sirhan and the killing of JFK, Robert F. Kennedy. But tell us your information about how the Nazis really won World War II.
I think I think what your listeners have to appreciate here, Ed, is that I'll keep it as simple as I can. Is that the history of World War II, the history of the entire Nazi movement, as presented to us in school, is entirely false, because what it leaves out is the fact that the leading industrialists in the Western world, in America, in Britain, and in Europe as well, these people were engaged in financing the Nazi Party, financing Hitler, and in building the Nazi war machine. I have obviously, because of what I've revealed, come across, I've been subjected to a great deal of criticism, and a lot of people have wanted to stick up for me. And if you look on the public comments on the few pirate copies of my film that still exist, because the government keeps taking them down, that alone should stir your listeners to greater investigation. People have said, I have checked out what Mr. Conolly has said here. I've looked into the research myself. And what they always wind up saying is, Mr. Conolly is not only right, I've found new evidence myself that backs him up. And what they have found is that it wasn't, for instance, just Henry Ford who was building the Nazi war machine, building trucks and tanks, etc., for the German soldiers to overrun Europe. It wasn't just Henry Ford who was doing it. It was the major manufacturers in Germany as well. BMW were involved, Mercedes were involved, Volkswagen were involved. I think it is reasonable at this moment in time to say that all basically German industry in that period were using slave labor. They were all profiteers of slave labor, and therefore the entirety of German industry has got blood on their hands and is responsible for Auschwitz and all of the other horrors. And they have never been prosecuted for it and deny it to this day. Now, Ed, really, people need to know that, don't they?
Yeah, one thing that I learned from your film and the book, JFK to 9/11, Everything's a Rich Man's Trick, is that the railroad to Auschwitz was a U.S.-run railroad.
Exactly, yeah.
The Harrimans.
Exactly, the Harriman brothers. Yeah, it was their company that was most involved. I mean, and Standard Oil with A.G. Farben. I think that this is why the film has, shocked America down to its socks. I mean, I've had people writing to me saying that they were just. Finding that they were saying to themselves, well, I've never known what reality is. A very common comment on in the public comment section is, you only think you know what reality is. You don't know what reality is. All you've got in your head is a television set. You've got this square box in your head, and you think it's told you the truth. And there's this whole other reality that you don't know about, and this is why you need to watch Mr. Conolly's film. And yes, I mean, the fact is that all of the Nazi horrors, this is what your listeners need to appreciate, all of the Nazi horrors that we think of as being the worst, the most terrible images, the greatest crime ever committed in human history, none of it would have been possible without American and British capital and American and British industrial involvement. And really, truly, I don't see how anybody can doubt that this is something that needs to be opened up like a can of peas and spread all over the table until we can investigate every last tiny detail of it and find out who the culprits were, because they can, still be punished even now. Some of them are still alive.
Someone is still alive and running the U.S. government.
So you took the words right out of my mouth, Mr. Robert.
Yeah, it's the faces we would recognize.
Where was Joe Biden while all of that was going on? I wonder. It's a very good question.
He's up to his neck in stuff right now, so he's got his own things going on.
Yes,
But now, you also talk about the secret societies and the skull and bones, and you discuss some of the practices of these secret groups that are occult practices.
That's correct, yes. There's so much occult, and I can appreciate that people, when I first started out writing about this, I think people had a hard time swallowing it, Ed, because it's so bizarre, it's so crazy, that it gets to the point where any rational, normal person is going to say, well, this is unbelievable. But if there's anybody out there who decides to, get the book or whatever to look into this or look at the movie, I would say to them, look into the Hampstead case. You must know about the Ricky Diamond case, Ed?
Yeah, I had Abe and Ella on the show, and I have to tell you, my experience with those two, it was not the best experience.
So who did you have on the show, sorry?
Abe and Ella, the parents of the children. Ricky, Ella is Dearman's ex-wife.
Oh, you had Ella on your show?
I've had Ella on the show.
I didn't realize that.
I've had a lot of people on this show, bro.
How did you manage to do that? Good God.
Again, these are some of the people I had on really before anybody had them on. It wasn't a big story when I had them on. It's an interesting thing behind the scenes of that whole Hampstead story, and even just saying the word out loud just drums up these trolls, is there's a whole organized troll base surrounding that story that seems to be controlled. If someone is controlling both sides or elements of both sides of that story, just like what your whole theory is here about how the elites control both sides of the war in order to profit, and to cause confusion and disinformation. People come in, groups come in to control both sides of a story, and I definitely noticed it in that story there. Other stories too as well. West Memphis 3, McMartin Preschool, anything involving Aquino, it all gets in there. Anything with Aquino, just bring up his name, they show up. But yes, very familiar with all that stuff. But we're talking about the occult, and it is a small group. These elites are a small number of people. They all know each other. They all know each other intimately. And for them to have this interest in the same kind of occult practice is not unusual. It wouldn't be out of the question, right?
Well, exactly. And again, if there's any of your listeners who are interested in this, and they should be, in fact, I do wonder, Ed, I mean, you must have come across the evidence that Angelina Jolie is involved in this nutcase thing.
I briefly saw that video. Yeah, where she described being involved in some kind of eyes wide shut type situation.
Well, it sounded like it, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah. It does appear that it's kind of widespread in certain circles. And like we were talking about off the air, too, there's these press agents that come in and just silence things and gets it removed and can pay people off to change the story.
Exactly. And this is why... in my last interview just a few days ago, I've said that I don't see how we can go on now unless we have a moratorium and suspend the U.S. Constitution for all those who were involved in the Epstein scandal and obviously with Ghislaine Maxwell and Prince Andrew as well. I want to see a campaign started. When I was on Jason Holmes' show, I said what I want people to pass around. I want them to paint it on walls. If a man has a van, please, put these words on the back of the van. Anybody could put it in their front window. Anybody could put it in their front garden. To simply say, Prince Andrew must testify. Because this is what everybody wants on both sides of the Atlantic, because it could not be any more obvious that this is what the Anglo-American establishment does not want. And, we are never going to get to the bottom of how many people are involved in this crazy, satanic, Luciferian occult thing. We're never going to get to the bottom of how many of the rich oligarchs, the top military men, the top police officers, etc., etc., etc. I mean, they're just in the last few days, and I wonder, Ed, if this information has reached you and your American audience. Do you know who Cressida Dick is?
No, I don't. Cressida Dick?
Well, I'm sure all of your listeners are going to say, "Oh, come on, you couldn't write this. You couldn't make this up." Cressida Dick. You couldn't make this up. You couldn't. That is her real name. I'm not being rude, honestly.
Okay.
She was the first woman ever to be made the chief of the Metropolitan Police in London. Your American listeners need to understand the Metropolitan Police are mainly concerned with the protection of the royal family. They are supposed to be just an ordinary police force as in any other city, but really their loyalty is to the maintaining of the establishment. And there has been all this evidence, just such a phenomenal amount of evidence, that Prince Andrew and his rich friends have created an international VIP pedophile network. There have been victims, most definitely, like Virginia Roberts, used as sex toys in New York at the Zorro Ranch, used for sex purposes on Epstein's Island, and then the same girls were flown into France, into Paris, and into London, and into royal places.
I think I just lost you. Oh, I got you.
And in spite of these facts being known, I mean, victims have given depositions. In spite of these facts being known, Cressida Dick just a few days ago said, "Oh, yeah, the Metropolitan Police, what have we done? We've looked into this entire case and we've decided there's nothing further to investigate. It's all an American problem and you're just going to have to solve the problem." Now, if that isn't rock solid proof that we have corruption right at the top of the Metropolitan Police, then I don't know where else you would look. It could not be more obvious that this is something that the British establishment wish would just go away. And that's why we have to push and push and push to make sure that it never goes away until the people who have hurt these children and killed these children and raped these children are in prison where they belong.
Well, let me ask you this, because you mentioned a couple of times the comments on the YouTube, pirated YouTube videos of your movie. I was reading some of them, and I was a little disturbed to see people talking about QAnon and where we go one, where we go all. And do you believe those people missed the point?
Oh, Phil, I bet your listeners are thinking to themselves, "By God, this Ed Opperman's sharp with his questions." the way he presents them. I think you should fill that out just a little bit more for me, to be fair.
Well, here we're talking about what is real, okay? These international networks with these interests, and it's definitely going on. You see it all over the place, and way more elaborate than Epstein. And you talk about, hey, there should be a boycott thing going on. How come there was never a boycott of Victoria's Secrets and Les Wexner and any of that? The guy's up to his neck in 10 scandals going on right now with the Ohio State University. But comments on your videos, okay, where people are saying, "Oh, don't worry," There's QAnon. There's the secret military tribunals, and they're rounding all these people up. And Mr. Trump is out there taking them down with baseball bats. It's coming. It's coming. Don't worry. What do you think those people have kind of missed the point of what you're trying to show people?
Well, Ed, let me say this. A lot of people have tried to get me watching QAnon videos, and QAnon says this and QAnon. I'll try and put this as as simply as I can. When they were trying to get Trump elected, and this is when I personally think they corrupted Alex Jones into the fold, because I've always said that the fight that Alex Jones had with Singh Uga, I've probably pronounced that incorrectly. I'm very sorry. I'm British. Forgive me. I've heard Jink. I've heard Dink. I've heard every damn thing.
Okay. I know you're right. It's Jank. Yeah, it's Jank. Yeah.
It's
Young Turks. The Young Turks.
It's the Young Turks guy. Yeah, him.
I hate that guy. Okay.
Well, I try not to hate people. Yeah. I try to be a rational one. But when the Trump election was coming up, my own take on it is that Roger Stone, being the man that he is, being the absolute card-carrying creep that he is, he'd realized, because power is his game, he had realized that at that point, that the influence of the internet and all of the information sharing and all of the stuff that was coming out about what was really going on in the world, and my work in particular, he realized that was where the election was going to be won or lost. Therefore, he was saying to Alex Jones, we've got to get these people on side. That was why there was this toing and froing between Alex Jones, where Trump is saying, oh yeah, Alex Jones is a really nice guy, and Alex Jones is saying Trump is for real. Now, at that point, this was when we started to hear about deep state. What I would say to your American listeners is, forget it. There is no deep state. There is a corrupt CIA. There is a corrupt, police department of police officials. The whole justice system throughout the whole of America, at the very top. Please don't think I'm offending the good cop and the good judge and the good prosecutor. I am not. I realize these people exist, and my God, we need to depend on them. But they invented QAnon basically as, and I think you realize this, Ed, to confuse people. They wanted to be able to say that there was really another CIA, a bad CIA, a bad FBI. That there was a hard core of people who were bringing America down, who were the dark side of your country, and that Donald Trump, this great hero, was going to step forward, and draining the swamp meant that he was going to get rid of them. This is just a tactic. That is all that it is. People had faith in Trump. All I would say is, has anything changed? Nothing has changed. And in actual fact, as you said at the very start of the show, it's just got worse. Now, it's very hard for me, because I know some nice people who are saying that they wish, that they had Trump back, because this hideous situation with Joe Biden and my girlfriend Kamala Harris. Good God, what is she like? I mean, it's such a farce. American politics has become such a farce. You can understand decent Americans wanting some stability. But I'm sorry, I have said from the very beginning that Trump is just a small gangster controlled by big gangsters. I need to say again, this anecdote I've told before, Ed, I think it's totally appropriate here. When I was on the Justin Stellman show, I said to Donald Trump, because I knew he was listening, and he'll be listening right now, I used that section to say to Donald Trump, look, there's a story right now on the wires that says that there is such a thing as a tribe or a group of 7-foot-tall jihadi warriors. It was done by Fox News. They had the film. They had all these tiny men in orange jumpsuits being led along a beach by apparently jihadi warriors who someone measured it that they were all uniformly 7 feet tall, or more than that. And so I said to Donald Trump, and I'm saying to him right now, out loud, Donald Trump, can you hear me? Come on, man. This is the second time I've asked you. You've had your chance. Was that story real or was it fake? Was that fake news? You're such an expert on fake news. Come on. Tell the American people, was it real or was it fake? Because if you go on and on ignoring me, then they're going to know that you're a fake. And up to now, you have ignored me and you've banned my film. Now, the American people need to make of that whatever they make of that.
You know, I could confirm one thing for you is, like you said, when Trump was right about starting to run, it was coming from Roger Stone. He was contacting all alternative media, internet radio types, and he was telling everybody, oh, Trump's the real deal. He's a 9/11 truther, just like us. and it was like word for word. You kept hearing the same little phrases coming back word for word. What was I going to ask you about? Okay. So we were talking about how, like, a lot of people are kind of missing the point. They're missing the point, and they think that some big Superman Trump's going to come save them. But now, what is the economic solution to this? Like, what is? I'm a socialist. I'll tell you right. I used to be an anarchist. I grew up on the Lower East Side of New York City. I was an anarchist with the yippies out in the street in New York City, and then I became a socialist later on in my life. And one of the greatest solutions I see to all our problems, if we were just to nationalize the oil industry and take it away, this $200 billion a quarter, and take it away from these rich few families like the Bushes, and you and I could share in all that wealth and lower the prices of oil and gas and the cost of goods and services, anything transported by truck. What is your solution?
Well, Ed, it's great that you brought this up, because if we weren't on AM radio, I would say, Ed, you're full of something that begins with S.
Okay.
And that would probably surprise your listeners, and it might even anger people who are tending towards some kind of socialist thinking now. Because I know there's been a lot of people, hasn't there, in America recently who've supported Bernie Sanders. That's right, yeah.
Well, they're supporting what Bernie Sanders' brand of socialism. There's a percentage of people doing that, but that's really welfareism. That's really not socialism, where we're nationalizing industries and workers are taking control of goods and production. They're just sprinkling more crumbs to people.
Well, you see, it's brilliant that you say that, because this is so important. Once again, this is something that I want not just Americans but the whole world to know. The only way that economically we're ever going to get sorted out is by finding a way, finally, for the first time in human history, to end corruption. No political program, Ed, will save us now or at any time in the future. What we've got to do now is forget about isms. In my life, I've heard about Thatcherism, Reaganism, communism, socialism, Marxism, thisism, thatism. It's always just another rich man's trick, and that is all. Whatever they give you will always be to benefit the few at the top and to keep everybody else pressed down. No matter what program it is, no matter how well they tell you it's been researched and looked into and written and prepared by brilliant people, it will always be done. No matter what ism there is, it will always be for the elite few and not for you and me. I was talking about this with Jason, as I say, just a few nights ago. And I've said to quite a few people, up until this very moment in history, I don't think it would have been possible to get rid of corruption at the top level, because there would be no way up until right now, or up until this very technology that you and I are sharing right now, to, as it were, keep an eye on all people in positions of authority all the time. But it is possible now. There was somebody sometime put a website up, and it was called Cameras on Politicians. It was taken down straight away. But basically, until the day we the public, we the people, can absolutely 100% know what every politician is doing and thinking and how they're acting and who they're meeting. Because up to now, all government throughout all of human history has been government amongst friends. You always get that. It doesn't matter, what country you look. It doesn't matter if you go all the way back to the Ptolemies. It doesn't matter if you go all the way back to ancient Rome, ancient Greece. What you always get, in effect, once the dust has settled. I mean, Donald Trump has had his best mate Roger Stone by his side for the whole of his life. Roger Stone learned everything that he knew from this awful figure, Harry Cohn. So, it's always like that. We are never going to get an economic program handed to us from above that will set us free. The people themselves have got to create an environment where the politicians are kept an eye on. There was a Star Trek episode one time, around the time that I was trying to write for the show, and when I got plagiarized, and it was called "Who Watches the Watchers?" ? That's the question that we've got to solve. Until the day that we have accountability for absolutely everyone, we will not solve our economic problem. Ed.
I agree with you that unless and until we arrest all these crooks at the top, we're in a hopeless situation.
Exactly.
But I got to tell you, I don't believe we're in a hopeless situation overall. And I don't put my faith in the internet or YouTube and this stuff back and forth. I think there's so much disinformation on it. And like we said, someone's watching your video. It's laid out there right in front of them. And they're talking about, QAnon's going to save us. You know what I mean? There's so many people. It's just hopeless, But how do we get to a situation where we can educate the public enough? Like if right now, if a UFO appeared in the sky, everyone would run out into the streets. We'd all be on the same page. You know what I mean? Something big like that. We'd all be on the same page, which is what we have to get on here, How do you see that happening with control of the media and control of YouTube and control of publishing? I deal with publishers all day long. A lot of stuff is controlled. What do we do? Richard Francis.
Well, this is Francis Richard again.
Yeah.
This though, Ed, is why, you see, I've fought so hard for so long, and the fight continues to get my work translated into other languages, because looking at the net effect that it's had, and I want your listeners to understand that there was no such thing, there wasn't a concept of fake news before my film came along. It was because Donald Trump was trying to throw people off and muddy the waters again that he ever came out with that crazy night which everybody remembers, I found, where he was saying, fake news. That was where that whole thing really began. And the Western world is now woken up. That is why they've tried so hard to discredit woke culture. It's because they're terrified of it. They have realized that a huge amount of the American public and the British public and the Australian public, anybody basically who speaks English, who's been able to see my movie, are now awake to the dirty tricks of the establishment. And it has changed the political landscape massively. It has pushed the oligarchs right to the edge. They feel right at this moment, and I was very glad the other night that Jason Holmes agreed with me that the oligarchs are on the knife edge. They're standing right on the edge of a cliff and must feel like they're being pushed backwards. If my movie could be in French cinemas, if my movie could be in Spanish cinemas, Italian cinemas, all over Russia, all over China, so that the whole world was at one in being woken up. That is a situation in which I do think it might be possible, because the amount of people who are running the world is so tiny. And yes, they've got these soldiers and they've got these brutal policemen and they've got all these thugs who are there to protect them. But I mean, if every American woke up at the same time, Ed, if all of your countrymen woke up at the same time, to what is really going on, and they all felt angry at the same time and decided, look, we've had enough of this. This can't go on any longer. There is no way, and the oligarchs know this, that they could stop. Well, let's say, okay, you've got children, and you've got old people, but there must be at least 200 million people in the United States of America who could pick up a gun, march on Washington, and say, "We've had enough," and get out. We're going to take over, and that is the day that I dream of, and it is possible.
The thing is, even picking up guns and marching, and if we even had the army behind us and the local police force behind us. These elites, these powerful rich, control the supply chain of goods and services. The power grids they control, and we can't. It would be step by step to recapture all of that. Look, look at no.
No, I don't. At the end of the day, what the elites directly control, I would say, directly control it, is the banking system. I would say that it's the salaried manager who controls the supply chains. I would say that on a day-to-day basis, the people who we have got most to worry about don't control the supply of food or even the supply of gasoline and oil. That is left to underlings. Okay, they can give the orders from the top as to where it goes or maybe who doesn't get it, but that doesn't mean to say that that they're always going to obey. Right at this moment, because of this whole controversy over this vaccine thing and the no jab, no job thing, it is waking up people as never before. And right at this moment, and Australia seems to be suffering more than any other country, as far as I can gather from what I've heard. I would love it if you don't mind me saying just one thing in a very pointed way. A lot of Australians at this moment are asking themselves, why is this happening to us? Why do we have closed borders? Why do we have rubber bullets being fired at people whose only crime is that they're protesting about this no job thing? The brutality. I mean, there's this Australian MP just a few days ago. He was interviewed by Anna Breeze. Craig Kelly. He says he doesn't recognise his own country. He can't believe the deterioration in Australian society. They are doing that to Australia for one reason, because Australia really worked harder and did more exposés on what was really going on with the paedophilia in London than anybody else in the world. Their journalism was absolutely top rate. If anybody wonders what I'm talking about, go online and watch an episode of 60 Minutes, I beg your pardon, called Spies, Lords and Predators. That's right, Spies, Lords and Predators. They were absolutely up in arms about how much was revealed in that episode, and it's because of that kind of journalism that the vindictive oligarchs in Britain and America are now getting their own back on the Australians and making them suffer so much. Being an irreverent society, and I think Australians are even more irreverent than Americans. Because they're an irreverent people, they don't easily just accept everything they're told, and don't easily accept that the Queen and the royal family are necessarily wonderful. They're much more sceptical and willing to look into, whatever's going on. And I think that Spies, Lords and Predators did more to harm relations between Australia and Britain than anything else ever has, and that's why they're suffering for it right now.
I'm familiar with the documentary you're talking about, the 60 Minutes Australian documentary. When Epstein first got arrested, and then when he died in prison, I was well, I believe he was walked out too, yeah. But the whole
the whole thing.
The whole thing. I was contacted by so many people in the media who just didn't have a clue what they were. They're just so naive and so gullible, didn't have a clue what they were talking about. And then looking back on it, I can see, too, that some of them were trying to confuse me and plant little doubts in my mind about certain things that I knew about and certain sources that I had. Like you said in your film and in your book, JFK to 9/11, Everything's a Rich Man's Trick, so much of the media is controlled by the intelligence community. We've done exposés on it on this shows with TV shows like American Idol and Cupcake Wars have financing from the Department of Defense and from the military and from the intelligence communities. It's so entrenched and embedded, and advertising works. It controls our minds. How do we overcome that?
Well, that is a fantastic question. I think that what people don't realize, and I think that, I almost think that if they did wake up to how insidious this media influence is, I think a lot of people would want to give up living. Because they just don't realize how it goes into absolutely every single thing. I think you do. But, just for instance, I know that now the Premier League, the English Premier League, because it's so world famous, it's become a very big thing, hasn't it, in America? A lot of people watch it over there.
What is it?
The thing is that they must have seen this thing about taking the knee that all the footballers have doing, all the footballers have been doing over the last couple of seasons. All this idea about, you've got to kick racism out of football, and we all take the knee in order to show how much we care about coloured players and all this tribe. They are so monumentally dumb. I put a Facebook comment on just a few hours ago to criticise Jurgen Klopp, the German manager of Liverpool. They just don't realise that the English Premier League is just like everything else. It's just a toy in the hands of the oligarchs, and it only exists as a distraction from things like Prince Andrew's paedophilia. On one of the versions, and I think it's the Alexander Avella upload. People might want to check there. I hope I haven't got this wrong. But there was a man who wrote in with an excellent comment. It was just a couple of lines saying, why the hell is it, do you think, that we have movies and sports and soap opera and this and that and the other thing in our lives? And he just said flat out, it's to distract us from what the oligarchs are up to. And people just don't see this, and they just don't see that it doesn't matter whether you're watching the news, if you're watching soap, if you're watching a gardening program. I mean, a lot of people would say, oh, come on, Mr. Conolly. They're not going to put disinformation and misinformation into a cookery program. You're not going to get, somebody like Letterman interviewing some new actress and say that is just a distraction. It absolutely is. Surely people by now must have noticed that there's this thread that runs right through all of the TV hosts thing, where you get somebody like Jay Leno or Letterman or somebody like that, and they have a guest on, and they always bring out this ditzy dame who's got big breasts, and she's got a low-cut dress, and basically she spends the whole of the interview falling out of the top of her dress. That is there. That kind of thing is there purely and simply to distract people.
Well, that's my favorite part. Okay. Okay. Now that's it. I've had enough of Francis Richard Conolly. Okay. But you know what, my friend? We are out of time, though. In about 1 minute, what do you want to leave us with?
Oh, could people just do the one thing that no one likes to do, Ed? You and I do, but people don't like to think. Please think. That's all. You need to do the one thing that people don't like to do, and think about what's really going on and why. Because unless you think about it, you'll never realize how valuable Ed Opperman and Jason Holmes and all of these other wonderful people who are doing all of these wonderful alternative media shows are to you, because you've got to think about what is true and what is not if you ever want to be free.
Francis Richard Conolly, thank you so much. The book is called JFK to 9/11, Everything's a Rich Man's Trick. You can get it at TrineDay.com, good old Chris Milligan, or also to anywhere you buy books online. In fact, go into your bookstore and ask them if they have it, and that encourages them to order it. Francis Richard Conolly, thank you so much. Anything new comes up, give me a call. We'll put you right on the air.
Yeah, you've been very kind. Thank you very much for having me on the show, and I've really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed talking to you.
Me too. Thank you very much.